Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jo, and welcome to episode 9 of the Society of Unpublished Authors. This podcast is recorded in Western Sydney on the lands of the Darug people. We pay our respects to the original custodians and storytellers of this land and to elders past and present. This week's episode is all about pitching, podcasting and publishing, and we are so excited to have special guest Dani Vee on the podcast with us. All right, Dani Vee, welcome to the Society of Unpublished Authors podcast. It's so lovely to have you on.
Thanks for having me on. I love a podcast.
That's good. Just a little bit of bio, just in case anyone doesn't know who you are. Dani, you're the host of the very popular literary podcast, Words and Nerds, and you've had over 2 million downloads and over 800 episodes. Amazing. You're also the author of fun junior fiction and picture books for kids, and you're a publisher at Larrikin House, and you've also been a high school teacher.
All correct.
Fantastic.
We were just looking at your video about reaching 800 episodes and 2 million streams. When you started your podcast, did you ever think that you would be where you are?
God, no, I didn't even know what I was doing, which is kind of good. I think if you go into something with expectations, like there's a chance you'll get disappointed. So I was on maternity leave. I had 2 babies close together. I was an English teacher and I really missed those conversations that I'd forced my high school kids to have about books. And I was just like, well, and my friend was doing a bake-off podcast and I was talking to him about it. I'm like, I wonder if I could do a book podcast. I wonder if anyone would listen. And so I'm just like, well, let's just do it. And if no one listens, well, what does it matter? Like, I still get to talk to cool authors and just see what happens. And so, yeah, what happened was that people did want to come on. People did want to listen. And I think it really peaked in 2020 when we were all at home. Struggling with being locked down, and it just kind of went through the roof. And then, yeah, I just kept doing it. And now we're 8 years and 800 episodes and 2 million downloads later, which is kind of weird. I keep expecting SoundCloud to come back and tell me it's a mistake.
We're having the opposite with ours. We're like, oh, surely we've got more listeners than that. We actually did try and go back because this is episode 9 for us. We tried to go back in the Words and Nerds archives and find your episode 9, but there's just so many spin-offs and so many, we just got a bit lost. We couldn't actually pick, because we were going to ask you, do you remember who you had on episode 9?
Oh my God, I'd have to Google that. Might have been Jackie French. I'm not sure.
Ooh, okay. It's an exciting 9th guess.
Yeah.
When we were thinking about everything that you've done and were writing your bio, it kind of was never ending, like a publisher and then a podcaster and writing and a mom you just have so much that you're working on that's going on. So do you have any tips and tricks or any secrets to having this creative life, but also this really busy life?
Yeah. Oh God. People always, I swear, every time I go out anywhere, they're like, how do you do everything? And I don't want to think about it because if I start thinking about it, it starts giving me anxiety. I do think it's about having a busy brain, ADHD, hence my picture book about that. And so it is a brain that never stops, which is good and bad. But I just think doing what you love is easy. Do you know what I mean? Even though sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get this day done? And you should see I have a desk calendar because I've got like multiple different calendars that are digital, which I'm sure that's not how they're supposed to operate. But I have this desk calendar which tells me, what I've got to do every day. And it's all like, jumping from this to that to this to that. But that's what my brain likes. And I just think I had this conversation before with someone and I'm like, it's harder not to do it because I've thought about it a million times. What could I give up if I felt like I was being overwhelmed, which is, every second day. And I'm like, it's harder to give up the podcast. I'm definitely never giving up writing. I love working in publishing. And I think it just gives me this sort of 360 view where I talk to authors about writing. I then get to, work in the publishing space and then I get to write. And so you get to have this really cool perspective from maybe all the perspectives, which I think, if you love it, it's easier. So I think you got to choose your hard. And for me, I've had this conversation with myself. It's harder not to do it. So I have no tips and no secrets, except that I'm very busy, but I'm very organized and have a very ADHD busy brain. And I have to jump from task to task because boredom is my kryptonite. That's it. That's all.
I
No
love
magic, I'm
that.
afraid.
Ah, and on your book about ADHD for children, you have such an amazing way of describing it in words and the pictures that go along with it. You really can get a feel for it. My background's childcare. I have met so many children, worked with so many children that have ADHD, and I think the book's a really good depiction for some of them. When you're writing books like that, are you thinking about uh, a particular child you would want them to see themselves in the book, or is it more what you wish you had had?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I found it very difficult to find myself in books ever. Do you know what I mean? Like I loved reading from a very young age, but I could never find myself in books in terms of, there was no label for ADHD. We didn't really talk about anxiety. Even, the way I looked, my dad's Dutch Indonesian, and I never saw people that looked like me. And so I think I really missed out on seeing myself. And so I still found bits and pieces of myself in, books that I love, but I felt like, wow, there's so much. In retrospect, I think there was so much lacking. As a kid, you kind of don't know, right? And then I had kids of my own, and my daughter's a bit of a copy paste of mine, and she's got the same brain. And I just thought, imagine being late diagnosed ADHD. If I had a label for this much younger, I wouldn't have always felt like I was a bit different to everybody else. Well, I would have, but I would have known why. I wouldn't have always sort of felt all those things that you feel when you've got ADHD and anxiety because of ADHD. And I think it just would have helped. And so now my daughter has language at 11 years old. Mum, I'm feeling anxious. Mum, I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's too noisy. I need my headphones or whatever. And I never had that as a kid. I was just like, oh, wow, what's happening? This is really scary and overwhelming. And I don't know what's happening to my brain. And so I think if that's me and it's my daughter and I was a teacher as well, it must be other kids and it must resonate with them. And so I've had so many kids read it and say, oh my God, I've seen myself. Every time I do a school visit, I'll get a message from a parent saying, oh, my kid feels like they're not, so weird anymore. They're sort of proud of their diagnosis. And so that was the point of the book. Yes, let's talk about the hard stuff. You're forgetting homework, you get overwhelmed, all that stuff. But being ADHD, you can also do lots of positive things, like we just talked about. I can do lots of things. I'm creative, I'm social, all those sort of things. There's good and bad, but I thought there's so many books about how hard it is. Let's create a book that there's joy in it as well and positivity, so kids can stop feeling shame about themselves. And I think that's where my journey of writing has led to making kids be proud of who they are, no matter who they are, and get rid of all that shame that we feel all the time because we're not, perfect and we're not this and we're a bit different because I think difference is cool.
Yeah, that's so good. So they're just gonna have a really different experience because of books like this that are coming out from Larrikin
Mm.
and from other publishers as well. Awesome. Yeah.
And it's awesome to have ADHD on the cover. It's actually not something that's a really subliminal message deep within the book. If you get it, you get it. Like it's on the cover and you can actually just see it on a shelf in Big W and be like, oh, the people are the same as me, or I'm not the only one in my class because it's on the bookshelf, because it's so just out there and so presentable to everyone.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
like you said,
hidden.
yeah, the shame's gone, which is so
That's what's
important. Yeah,
interesting because if you read the book, ADHD is not mentioned at all in the manuscript. It's only on the cover.
on the cover.
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was sort of a deliberate choice to go, well, parents are busy, grandparents are busy, teachers are busy. They don't want to, like, I don't have time to look at every single book and see what everyone's about. This is about ADHD. 20% of the population are diagnosed, probably more undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And this is what the book's about, and it looks joyful and it looks happy and it's about the supercharged part of the ADHD brain rather than, I was a teacher and ADHD was never presented as a positive thing. It was always, the naughty boy thing. And I
yeah,
think that's why so
Yeah.
many girls have been late diagnosed because that's why a girl was deliberately on the cover because we've been underdiagnosed because it was the naughty boy disease when, we know that's not true.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think on that too, when you are thinking about like gaps in the market or where children can't see themselves, is that something that you're researching and really deliberate in from the publishing lens, or is that you get a book and you find something so special and you think, yes, that's missing?
I think it's a bit of both. I think my writer brain is like, oh, I'd love to write a book about this. I'd love to write a book about this, but it doesn't always work for the industry, because there's a million
Yeah.
books like that, or yours isn't unique, or it's not the right time, or, we've all been there. And so I think having that sort of other perspective as well. I pitched this series to James like about probably 3 years ago. And I said, I think I'd really like a positive neurodivergent series. And it took me a couple of years to convince him it was a good idea. Because and a different, like, doesn't have to be the same author. It has to be own voice experiences. So the next one coming out is by Kate Foster about autism. And so just own voices about the neurodivergent brain, but thinking as positively and joyfully as we can about it. So that was definitely, I saw a gap in the market just because I was looking for books because it was sort of personal to me. And I thought there needs to be more books with joy about the neurodivergent experience, not all doom and gloom. And so I did find that gap, I guess. And I guess you're just lucky as well. Like you see it, but you don't know if it doesn't exist because no one wants it or it
Yeah.
doesn't exist because you need to feel like, yeah. So it's always a risk, like I feel like I live and breathe this industry and I go to conferences and I listen to other publishers and I get feedback from our distributor and, the discount department stores, and still it's always a moving target publishing, so you have your finger on the pulse and sometimes you still miss it. And so I think just, you know, being as aware of the industry as you can and getting obsessed with, your bookshop walls and your big W walls and seeing what's out. I think we're never going to get it right 100%,
Mhm.
but you try very hard. And as well as that, like you think about what kids need, and that's sort of what the direction Larrikin House has taken in terms of really wanting kids to see themselves, because we think that's just so important. And we've got, many books coming out, one by Jess Horn about accessibility, See the Dodd about Tallulah Pterodactyl, who none of her friends can spell or say her name, and she, thinks about shortening it. And of course, no, if you're my friends, that's not how that's going to go. So, we are trying to get kids to see themselves. So, yeah, I think that's definitely where we're headed at the moment. So it is about filling gaps, but it's also about, what do kids want? How do we make kids feel good about themselves? It's a
Yeah,
tough world out there. How do we make
totally.
kids feel good about themselves?
Yeah. And you mentioned the term own voices. So as a publisher, are you wanting people with absolute lived experience to write these books?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think it's okay if you have a child that is
yep.
experiencing, anxiety or has ADHD or autism or whatever, because that's your experience as well, because you're parenting them. But I feel like, look, I just talked about ADHD as a joyful and positive thing, but it can also be quite the challenge. My anxiety stems from ADHD. You should see me after a dopamine crash once I've had a really big day, and the next day it's not so good. Um, the overwhelm and those kind of things, like they're not fun things to experience. And so I think if someone just said, "Oh, I'm just going to get on the ADHD train to, either write a book or profit from this book or whatever," I don't think that's a good thing, because I think kids are only going to see themselves through authentic experiences. So we're really big on, if someone presents us with a book, is this you or your kids, or even the kids you teach, maybe, because you've got good experience with that. But it's really not something, and I wouldn't write outside my own experience. Like, I'm not talking about having a pet crocodile, because of course you can do that. But those, really personal things that
Yeah.
really impact you and only you can talk from an authentic experience, I think it's really important. And I think that's why ADHD brain resonated with kids, because they can see themselves, because it's true. I didn't just make
Yep.
it up and Google and ask ChatGPT. Like, this is things that I'm experiencing.
Yep. And chances are someone else is experiencing it as well. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's one thing that we talk about sometimes. So my husband's Peruvian, so my children are brown, and I'm always looking for books about children in like a bicultural home, or their parents speak different languages, or those kind of little things that are fun and funny in our family. And I always think like, oh, but I'm not brown, so maybe I can't write it. But hearing you say, like, sometimes the parents, look, it is still the lived experience. That's actually really encouraging, I think, too,
Oh,
for people
that's your
that feel,
experience.
yeah, for
Yeah.
people that maybe feel like they're close to it, but it's not their identity, but they are close as
Mm.
family. I think that's
But
really
it's your
interesting.
family, and you're living that experience, So I think
Yeah.
that's definitely your experience.
Yeah. It's sort of like, do I have permission to tell this story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Mm.
whatever that means. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And it's a minefield, like
Yeah.
you could
Totally.
probably have debate about this forever. But I feel like if someone said, "Oh, I wrote an ADHD book," and they kind of didn't suffer the ADHD consequences, I'd be like, "Really?
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
cool."
It's sort of like
Yeah.
about being respectful, really. And
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like James, actually. When I was writing My Spinning Anxious Brain, he was, because he wrote the ADHD one with him. I'm like, "You're not in this at all. You've never experienced anxiety for a second in your life." And then he goes, "Oh, can you make anxiety fun?" And I'm like, "Not really." Like, I don't know that I've ever had fun having a panic attack, but it did actually make me think, okay, I can't make anxiety fun because it's ridiculous, but how can I sort of pull out the strengths or the positivity of it? And it wasn't easy, but in the end, I was like, okay, to have anxiety, you actually have to be resilient because you've got no choice, and you have to be courageous and you have to go outside your comfort zones. And so at least I was able to go, it's not fun because that'd be, it's not an authentic experience, but at least there's these positive things that you kind of have no choice but to be resilient, courageous, and go out of your comfort zone if you suffer anxiety. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And even for kids without anxiety, if that book was read to their class, or they could still see positive things in that they can sort of apply to themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think the book is not only written for the kid with ADHD and anxiety, but it's written for the kid who sees, their friend have anxiety and kind of like, oh, I don't really understand that, because if someone doesn't have anxiety, you kind of can't understand it. And I remember when someone asked me, oh, what does it feel like? I was telling them all the physical things that anxiety feels like my skin feels weird and I'm dizzy and I'm finding it hard to breathe and my chest is tight. And they're like, oh, this is a real physical thing. So unless you experience it, you can't understand it. So I think it's for other kids in the room as well and parents to go, oh, okay, that's what it feels like. Maybe I can have a bit of empathy for this person if they're not coping in this situation.
Yes, we are all for books building empathy and everyone going out and reading fiction to just up their empathy.
Can't hurt in a world like we're living in today.
Totally. Yes.
So this is kind of a publishing question. When you're publishing, do you find that you're publishing more books from like manuscript assessments where you have relationships, or do you find that you're finding gems in the slush pile in submissions?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I'm just thinking of the last ones that we published. So Jess Horn was the only manuscript that we took out of the submissions pile last year. I'm hoping this year will be a bit more successful, but there was just one that spoke to us. Seether was through the Larrikin House Prize, which is a new prize running second year this year, later in the year. Quite new when they do manuscript assessments. And so a lot of them are like, oh, this is my first manuscript, or I just decided to start writing, things like that. They do have a free pass to submit, but sometimes it's it just takes a bit of practice. But in saying that, we published Alicia Kelly, who came to every one of our workshops, Larrikin House workshops and pitch parties. And we ended up throwing around some ideas with her and she pitched Celebration Festival. And James was like, yes, love that, write it. So we signed her from there. So I guess all different places. We meet people from conferences. I've got a lot of, contacts and friends as well who, if I'm like, oh, are you writing this or are you writing that? So I guess that the answer is a little bit from everywhere.
Yeah.
When we went to the Queensland conference, we signed 3 people. So 2 illustrators, and that's where Jess Galatalo signed hers. And we found Katrin Dreiling, who I just love her illustrations. So conferences are good places. I think manuscript assessments or feedback from anyone you can get is a really good idea. And then obviously always have a go at the submissions pile, or it's pretty tough gig. The Larrikin House Prize is really positive. So I just think you just got to do as much as you possibly can and put yourself out there and it will stick. And I always have this advice because I just really feel bad because it takes ages for us to get back to people. Usually I'm trying not to make that for submissions on 1st of June. I'm trying to be really fast. But I just say, just write, submit, forget, and repeat.
Yeah.
If you sit there wasting your time scrolling your email and refreshing it, you're not writing, you're not learning, you're not rewriting, you're not editing, you're not engaging, you're not going to book launches, you're not going to, you know what I mean? So I think spend your time wisely. Publishers are slow, really busy. Just write, submit, repeat, forget, and do it again. I said that in the wrong order, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Yeah. Because if you just have all your hopes and dreams on this one manuscript, like, and then after 6 months, or you eventually hear, you've
Yeah.
wasted 6 months
Right.
when you could be working something
Adam
else.
Wallace is the perfect example of this. Like he's a super successful author and sold millions of books. And he goes, "Yeah, I published 100 books," which sounds really impressive, and it is really impressive, Adam. But he said, "I've got, what, 1,000, 100, whatever, a massive amount on his laptop that haven't been published and will never be published or may not be published."
Mm.
So, I think you have to have that mindset of you just need to write and write and write. And, you get better every time you write. Every time you get a bit of feedback, every time, you put pen to paper or fingers on the keypad, you get better because it's like that mastery of skills. You do
Yeah,
it more, you get better.
that is so true.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
practice.
Yes, yes.
And that's the fun part. Like the writing is so much more fun than typing up the bio and trying to submit and on the portals and navigating. Like the writing is actually the really joyful part of the whole
Yeah,
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah.
it
Speaking
certainly
of
should be.
bios, oops, sorry.
No,
I
I
was
was
just
just going
saying,
to say, sorry, I think in manuscript assessments, some people get, and it's hard, I get it. When I was unpublished, I just really wanted to be published. But I think some people sort of lose their vision and they're like, oh, I just want to be published. So I wrote this because this is what you wanted last time, and this is what I thought you said you wanted. And I feel like you've lost the joy and the craft of writing. So yes, we all want to be published. And even people who are published are going, oh my God, when's my next contract? So I get it. But I think first and foremost, you have to focus on the craft and focus on the writing. And if you do that, the publishing will come. If you are focused on the publishing and not on the writing, I feel like you're just making it harder for yourself.
yeah, you got it backwards. Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Well, that's kind of why we're called the Society of Unpublished Authors. We know that we may never get published. We just want to find the joy in the writing, in the creating, in connecting with other people because it is really fun thing to do, even if sadly you'll never see your name on a book cover. Yeah.
Don't give up just yet. Come
Yeah.
on.
No, no, no.
No, definitely not. We were working on our bios for some submissions coming up, and we were thinking, wow, these like manuscript up here, bio, not quite the same standard of writing. Like, what do you put in a bio? Is that something that publishers are really drawn to? Like, if you read a bad bio, are you immediately just not counting them, or are you kind of like, oh, the manuscript's so good, the bio can be worked on?
I can't speak for every publisher, but for Larrikin House, James always says, I can't publish your bio. I can't
Yeah.
publish any
Yeah.
awards you've won. I can't publish any of that. So I have told everyone, I've made a bunch of videos coming up to submissions for
Yeah.
Larrikin House, and I've just said, put your story first because I'm only interested in your bio once I like your story. You know what I mean? If your story doesn't fit or if it's not well written or if the rhyme is hurting my brain, I'm not even going to get to the bio, to be quite honest. I'm going to have 500 to read on Monday. So if I like the story, then I'm interested. And then like, so what? Do you know what I mean? If
Yeah.
your story is amazing and it fits the market and we think that, it's going to be commercial and educational and it's going to sell well and it's an idea we love, I don't care if it's your 100th book or you haven't published a book and it's well
Yeah.
written, I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't care. And that's not something that we discuss in acquisitions. Maybe other publishers are different. We sort of, do whatever we want. But I love this story and I'll actually read the stories aloud because I read all the manuscripts, but James has to actually give me the money to produce them. And, picture books $10,000 to $15,000. So he doesn't take that lightly, but I'll take a very small percentage of the manuscripts that I think will work and I'll read them to him aloud blind. So I won't even tell him who wrote them because sometimes they're mine. And I never tell him that it's mine because I want his honest opinion. And he'll look at me and go, who's this? I'm like, I'm not telling you. Tell me what you think. And so
That could go
I'm
either way.
yeah, that's right. I know he's scared, but I'm like, no, you just have to tell me what you think. And it's been a fun experience, even though, it's very hard for the writer if it's you. But I think it's important because we're just focused on story. Of course, then, it is harder with a debut author sometimes, but then sometimes it isn't. What's hard, I think, to be quite honest with you, if the discount department stores take it, if Scholastic Book Club take it, if Lamont take it, your book's going to work. So in a way, it just has to have a great cover, a great title. It's got to be a great story, and with picture books, particularly, So yeah, no, long answer to a very short question.
Yes.
I don't know about other publishers. I don't even care about your bio. Give me an amazing story that I cannot resist,
Yeah.
and I don't care if you've written one book or none.
Okay. That's really helpful. Yeah.
That's so helpful because the bio is such a like necessary part. It's on every single submissions, but it's
Mm.
also the least fun. So I'm glad to hear
Yeah. When
that.
you have no published books, you're like, what do I put in this thing? But
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you're like, I'm 5'9", I have a laptop.
I guess if you're in teaching, that might help,
yeah.
or if you write in your career, that might help. So I guess just trying to, when you write your CV, I don't want to say
Yeah,
be
Yeah.
creative, but
Yeah.
focus on the things that may be relevant.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's very hard,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Good to know. All right. Well, we are almost out of time, but you've got your submission portal open on the 1st of June, and we will have this episode out before then. So, do you have one final tip for anyone who's going to submit to you? I'm really stressed for you having to read 500 manuscripts, but let's give everyone a chance. One final tip.
One, I want to tell you a million, but I'll just
Okay.
try one. I think the one thing, because everyone knows you have to write it well, make sure your rhyme doesn't suck, or I'm going to get so much
Okay.
hate for that. What
Yeah.
I mean is make sure your rhyme is beautiful and invisible.
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned, and this is probably the more interesting thing, because everyone knows that stuff. The most interesting thing I think that I've learned as a writer from publishing is know what your key selling points are even before you write it, right? So one of my jobs as a publisher is to go, okay, Jess Horn's book, Starfish Can't Ride Bikes. It is about changing the environment, not the person. It's about getting rid of shame for the child. It's about making sure they have access. It's about equality. And it's fun, and this character is, so sassy. You're gonna love it. It's got this great twist at the end. So, but you can see what I did there with the first few dot points, and I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly what they were, but you get the gist. It was about, why a kid would want to read this, and why a teacher would want to read this to their class, why a librarian would want to buy it, and why a parent would want to buy it. And so I think don't leave your key selling points to the end. Or some people, I guess, before when I was a baby writer, I wouldn't even think about that. But I'm encouraging writers to think about it at the forefront because I think it gives you that sort of, and you have to have kind of tunnel vision with a picture book. So you got about 400 words. So it just really focuses you. Okay, my book is about accessibility. It's about kids not feeling shame, and it's about changing the environment and not the kid. And it's going to be fun and funny. All right, cool. So every word, sentence, line you write, you focus on those few dot points.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what
are
I've
you
sort of
writing?
at
Oh,
day.
yes.
Yeah.
Are you actually saying at the top of your manuscript, these are the key selling points, or you're just discovering that through the manuscript?
I should be able to discover it through the
Yeah, okay,
manuscript.
sure, sure, sure. You don't
But
want
if
actually people to list the key
oh,
selling points
I'm happy if they do, but do it after the
right
manuscript. I just want to look at the story. I'm not going to get to
after.
anything unless I love the story.
Yeah,
But put
yeah,
it after but it should be obvious. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
some people
right.
go, oh, but my story's about this. I'm like, oh, I didn't see
Is
that. And
it?
if I don't see it, the kid's not going to see it.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think it's helpful. But sometimes I'll say in an assessment, like, I understand that that was your purpose. I kind of see it, but how can you make that really strong? And if you make that really strong, that could be a really great manuscript. So yeah, I think it's about just writing them down for yourself. And it's kind of like that elevator pitch as well. I'm trying to achieve this. And you will, because it's so easy to go on a tangent, to have two stories stuck together. Like I see this all the time. So, when we say think like a publisher, I think that's the best advice you can have. Think about your purpose, what this is about, how I can get it to as wide an audience as possible, and what I'm trying to achieve. What I want the kid to feel after they read this. And then I think you'll have a really good sort of way to start and get into your manuscript because we all know we've looked at a blank paper and gone, I don't even know words anymore. But if you can
hopefully.
do that, yeah, it keeps you on track. Otherwise, we kind of, veer off into directions and you can't do that in a picture book.
Such
Is that
great
helpful?
advice. Yeah,
Yes.
super helpful.
Yes.
Yes, really, really helpful. Did you have any final questions, Sarah?
Ooh, no, not really.
We
I
did
think
have we did have one question just from my writers group. Is Larrikin ever going to perhaps go into like graphic novels or picture books for older? It has some picture books that are definitely for older kids. Can you see
Mm.
yourself going into either of those territories?
As a small publisher, we just have to do what is going to work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We don't have the luxury maybe of all the, millions of dollars that the big publishers have. So we have to just go, this is working. And I'm obsessed with Nielsen data, which is what sells each week. I'll have a look every Thursday to see what's working and what's not, or what's selling and what isn't. And we just listen to the market. So when JFIC was hot, we started JFIC. Now JFIC is not so hot. We're not accepting JFIC because it's expensive to produce because you've got author illustrator and it's just not doing the numbers. So at the end of the day, we're a creative industry, of course, but we also business. And so we're just looking at what's working. At the moment, picture books are working for us, middle grade. We haven't done YA, but we'd like to explore that. And we're moving into adult commercial fiction as well with our second one coming out with John Purcell at the end of the year. And so we just sort of follow whatever is selling. Graphic novel, we've done two by Christy Byrne and Joel McKerrow, and they're beautiful books, but there's so many amazing graphic novels in the world that are color as well, and they're just so expensive to produce.
Right.
So So I would say never, but we follow the market and what the market seems to want right now because we sort of, we do take risks, but we have to take risks within a limit of being a small publisher. So what we're accepting this year might be different to what we're accepting next year. It's a never say never situation. It's whatever we think is going to sell the best. And that's not just for us because we want our writers and illustrators to earn money as well.
Yeah.
And like I say, you listen to the market as much as you can. I'm obsessed with data. I actually really love data, but you're never going to get, no publisher's ever going to get 100% right. As long as you get it right most of the time, I think you're okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dani. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate everything you've told us, all your great wisdom. We love everything that Larrikin's doing. And good luck to everyone who's going to submit to you, and good luck reading those 500 around about manuscripts.
Yeah, look, the trick is just to get in and do it fast. And I did it in 3 days last year. And I just think, because I think you need to just get in the zone. So fingers crossed, I'm just going to get in the zone.
Yep. Good luck, Dani, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. All right, see you. Bye.
That's all from us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
You can find us at the Society of Unpublished Authors on a whole bunch of different social media platforms. You can also find me on Instagram at Jo Diggs, Jo_Diggs.
And you can find me at author Sarah Della Piedra.
And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.